Now, we have a special treat for you today, our speaker. I'm going to call her by Patty. And when I met her first time, she was a delight, and I'm sure that you will enjoy her talk today as a keynote speaker. Now, you do have our bio in front of you, so I don't want to take time again to read it from there. I'm going to give a surprise for you, and you're going to watch for yourself what kind of speaker she is. And she is Patty. Please welcome Patty.
Thank you. This is such an exciting evening for me. You students are doing stem cell research. I was in the lab with Mohammed and Dr. Ghosh, and I got to view into the microscope, and I saw stem cells moving around. And I am here tonight to share with you my story that we have entitled My ReBirth Day. And I'm going to share with you my stem cell transplant journey. This is a most auspicious evening for me because, first of all, I consider my transplant my ReBirth Day. And when I learned the date of tonight's presentation, I realized it was on the eve of my transplant anniversary. Tomorrow is my ReBirth Day, and it is my 7th anniversary of my transplant. And I couldn't be with a better audience than all of you and you students who have been doing stem cell research, and I am so appreciative of the work that you are doing. So thank you for having me tonight. This is life, and this picture, nor my standing here with you tonight, would happen without the work of the predecessors of you seniors who have been doing stem cell research and you freshmen who will be doing that kind of work. Your predecessors made it possible for me to stand here tonight and tell you that it's my 7th anniversary. And the work you're doing, those of you who choose to continue on in this career, you are going to be giving new life to people just like me who have cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, heart disease, spinal cord injuries. And I hope that those days you're kind of just plugging along and looking at these cells and maybe trying to figure out what they might be able to do. I hope you think back to tonight and remember me standing here with you and how grateful I am to your predecessors who made this possible. So, the focus of tonight's talk is about my stem cell transplant journey. But I can't go into that without giving you a little bit of historical background. And so I'm going to take you briefly through cancer round 1 and cancer round 2. And I'm going to sit for the rest of this presentation. This picture was taken this last July at Stanford Medical Center, which is where I had my transplant. And the BMT is bone marrow transplant. We now more commonly use the term stem cell transplant, but this day is such a day of celebration, of many, many joyous tears, of complete strangers hugging each other because they are another transplantee. We are invited because we are the survivors still from Stanford's 20 years this last summer of doing stem cell transplants they do about 300 people a year. And I'm one of those lucky ones. Okay, so we're going to go into cancer round 1. I am taking you back to 2000, 4th of July party. I'm on the right in a red and white striped shirt. I'm looking healthy, happy, but there were these little niggles of discomfort that I was experiencing in my shoulders and in my hip bones. Here I am with my new-to-me truck. I'm again healthy, happy. Those little niggles of discomfort by this time had become quite painful. And on Labor Day, this is August of 2000, and on Friday night of Labor Day weekend, I experienced the most agonizing and excruciating pain I've ever had in my life, with a pain going down my left leg and my left hip, down my left leg, and across my left toes. Approximately a month later, I was given my diagnosis, which was stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And because I don't know your experience with cancer or any of these terms, and by the way, I am sharing this story with you in layman's terms. I'm not a medical professional. I am not a biology background person. So this is in layman's terms to help you understand the process. But stage 4 means it is the most invasive. It's the worst level you can have. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a blood cancer similar to leukemia. And it means that you have cancer throughout your lymph system in your body. Now, in addition to that, I was also told that I had multiple organs fully metastasized, completely filled with cancer. And in addition to that, I had 6 sites of bone metastases. So this was not the best moment in time for me, and things were looking pretty grim. But the best thing in the world happened for me. I got mad. I mean, I got really, really mad. And I'm a really proactive person. I'm a management consultant by profession, and everything we do is about process and change and improving situations. And I took this on as a consulting opportunity to save my life and to be very proactive with my physicians and with everything that I did. So that mad is what drove me forward. This picture is simply because we knew that I was going to have certain chemotherapy drugs and I was going to lose my hair. And this was taken just so that we could make sure we had the coloring because of my hair, which is natural. So is all this gray that I have now. But I didn't know how soon I was going to lose my hair. So we took the picture in the event that it went away within a few days or a couple of weeks, and I quickly got my wig, my first wig. I actually ended up with 2. So that's why that picture's there. Before I go into this, I meant to tell you that the very first 90 days from my diagnosis, I was living on my right side. I was in my bed on my right side. I was eating on my right side, talking on the telephone on my right side, reading, visiting with friends, and any movement, coughing, certainly getting up to go to the bathroom or trying to change my location because I was bored, was excruciating. Now this picture is taken on Thanksgiving weekend, and there's my bald little head. And I'm fixing an apricot wreath to take to friends for celebration of that day. This is a Christmas first weekend in December. We're now up to, I think it's month 4 since the beginning of my diagnosis. This is my precious, wonderful daughter, Terrell. And we went to a Christmas festivities and we got to sit with Santa and have our picture taken. And then, there we are. This is my annual Christmas party. And my friends were so incredibly loving and supportive from the get-go. They were there before we had blogs. My cousin, who's a computer guru, she created a website for me, and the notes and letters were coming in on email and in postal, and they loved me and they supported me and lifted me and carried me all the way through round one. And now we move into 2001. Now this is month, we jump forward 3 more months. I'm in the middle, and I am dressed in a costume for a number called Viva Las Vegas. I went from lying on my right side for the first 90 days to being in a musical production in which we rehearsed for 2.5 months. I am now walking again, and I am singing, and I am dancing, and there's another number where I was actually doing a Rockette line kick, but this is another number, and this is called Viva Las Vegas. And in this number, we've been rehearsing 2.5 months. I mean, I know this number's stone cold. This is dress rehearsal day, and on dress rehearsal day, that morning, I had my appointment with my oncologist, and I learned that morning that I was in remission. And I went to dress rehearsal that night, and none of my colleagues knew I had been going through a cancer treatment journey, and none of my colleagues, fellow singers and dancers, knew that I was wearing a wig. I'm bald under there, just like you saw me at Thanksgiving. And so this is the first night we're in our costumes. And we've been doing this number over and over again. And there are these 2 movements that happen at the same time, and we do them consecutively 3 times. And that movement is, and I'm not going to get off my stool, but we do this little head spin. We go like, zing. And while we're doing that little head spin, we also twirl around to the right. We have a second or 2 with our back to the audience, and we twirl around again with our little head spin. I'd never worn this headpiece before, and it's a little heavy. And as I did my little head thing, my wig went flying backwards, and I was so surprised. And with my back to the audience, I grabbed a hold of those bangs, and I yanked my wig forward to keep that headpiece on my head. And I was so surprised, I was laughing so hysterically. And we did this 3 times, and each time, the back to the audience, grabbed the bangs, pull down the wig, pull down the headpiece, and come back around to the audience. And I laughed the whole way through the rest of that number. So that's a fun little story about me and my wig. I had 2.5 months to go play with my friends. I went to the East Coast. I went to a family wedding. I came back. I'm having a fun time. I'm having barbecues with my friends. And I am told I have cancer again. It is more aggressive. It is more virulent. And I need to start chemotherapy once again. So that begins 7 months more. The first round was 10 months. Now I have 7 months more of treatment to go through. On the second treatment, I was told by my oncologist that I needed to consider a stem cell transplant. And I had about 4 months to do research. And as I was doing my research, I was considering only doing not a transplant and just continuing on in an alternative manner. I should go back and tell you one of the things that happened when I got really mad back there in the beginning at the diagnosis is that I decided that I was going to use alternative modalities along with Western medicine. And in my case, that was just chemotherapy, no radiation at that time. And this is called an integrative approach to going through one's cancer journey. So now we're talking about the stem cell transplant, and I am not liking what I am reading. And I'm thinking, you know, I might just do this alternatively. But I had that time to research, and one of the things that Stanford would not tell me was the survivability rates. And I couldn't get anything totally definitive, but I did find one paper that had one number on it. And at that time, 7 years ago, the survivability statistics were between 23 and 40%. That was distressing. But I was committed, finally, to having the transplant after I read a number of medical papers. And we began that in February of 2002. This was the Christmas before I began my transplant. There I am again with my daughter and my granddaughter, my daughter Terrell, my granddaughter Emily. And at this annual Christmas party, I thanked my friends. We all knew I was going into the transplant, and they knew that I was telling them goodbye if that was necessary. There's a process to every single thing in life, and there's a process to a stem cell transplant. And the first process is getting the patient as cancer-free as possible. And that's what I did round 2 with those 7 months of chemotherapy. The next thing one does is you decide where are you going to get your stem cells. The best place to get your stem cells is from your own body. If you cannot do that, the next best is from your twin. The third best is from a sibling. And the next opportunity is from what is known as a non-related donor. And I was really, really lucky. I was going to be able to donate to myself. But in order to do so, I had to shoot up with drugs for about 2 weeks long, giving myself 5 shots a day, and I am needle phobic. But I learned how to give myself shots, which I had to learn in cancer round 1 and 2. And I was giving myself shots about 5 times a day to boost the white blood cells so that I could have those white blood cells harvested. And what this picture is about, in my right chest, there's a port. I still have the scar. There's a port, and out of it, all these tubes that I have in my hand are coming out of it. And I am watching my blood go out of these tubes, and they go into this machine, which is called an apheresis machine. It's sort of like a kidney dialysis machine, I am told. What I felt like was that I was a cow on a milking machine. But it was absolutely fascinating because I'm sitting there and I'm watching my blood, very, very dark red, darker than wine, and I'm watching it go out. And what I know is happening is it's going through the apheresis machine, and stem cells, the way I've been told, is they are collected because of gravity. They are of a different gravity than your other cells, and so they are able to be separated out from the rest of the quote-unquote leftover blood. So the blood is going out of me here with the port in my chest, and then it's going through the machine, and it's getting separated out, and then whatever is left over is coming back into me. Pretty cool. You're about to see some really unattractive photos. This is certainly one of them, and the reason I'm showing it to you, sorry it's my naked body, but I'm covering up the vital parts, is do you see the Sharpie drawings around my breasts? That drawing and the one on my back shows where the inch-thick metal plates are going to be put in a harness, in a sack, to protect my lungs from being fried when I go through radiation. The next thing one does is you have to get fully hydrated, because the very first step of the transplant process, we're now in the preparation stage of the stem cell transplant, is because you're going to be radiated, and this happens 3 times a day for 5 days, you are basically being burned up. And you must be fully hydrated so that you have all of that hydration in your body so you don't totally fry yourself. There's 1 full day of full hydration, and then you carry around this little portable machine everywhere you go, and it's just continually pouring hydration into you. This big, huge thing, terrifying to me, in an enormous room that was absolutely freezing cold. This is the radiation machine. And I got to pick the music that would play while I would stand in front of it from anywhere from 15 minutes to 25 minutes, absolutely still. And I went into this with a respiratory cough, and I kept praying, don't cough, don't cough, don't cough. And I get to listen to my Broadway tunes, and of course I'm wanting to sing along to them, and I can't, and I'm listening to country music. And I'm hanging in a supportive thing, because every time you have radiation, you get more and more weak, and it is possible that you get more and more nauseous and vomiting. And I had learned in Cancer Round 1 and 2 how to use laser acupuncture with a laser pointer on specific points of my body to control all my nausea and vomiting. So I was really fortunate that I didn't do that. But you do get more and more weak. And sometimes you just have to hang there in your supportive structure. So that's me getting ready for radiation. The radiation is followed by chemotherapy. 2 days of massive chemotherapy. There was a day in between radiation and having chemotherapy. Now, Cancer Round 1 and Cancer Round 2, I was spending from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon sitting in a treatment chair and having chemotherapy poured into my body. This round of chemotherapy that are 2 days separated by 1 day in between are 10 times greater than any regular treatment of chemotherapy. And basically what a stem cell transplant preparation is about is to completely annihilate one's bone marrow. And as my understanding is, all of our cellular structure comes from our bone marrow. And without cellular structure, you do not have life. And the idea is to make sure there's no cancer in your body when you are getting ready to receive your stem cells. So cancer chemotherapy, day 1, day 2, that is done in the regular hospital. Now I am moved from that hospital room into the bone marrow transplant wing, where every patient has a room, and you're in a room of isolation. Each room has an antechamber that anytime a nurse or a visitor, and I only had 3 visitors, my cousin Janet, my daughter Terrell, and my dear friend Nancy, who's taken all these pictures that you're seeing tonight. And each person, as they walk into the antechamber, has to do a complete iodine wash of their hands and their arms. They have to don the cap, the mask, the gown, and in some cases gloves, and then they can come into the room. We get to decorate our room, and I took down all kinds of fun things that were special to me in my life. This is my left wall. I'm in the bed. This is my left wall. I got to look outside the window. Beautiful grounds, sunny skies. This is what's in front of me, and I'm looking at very wonderful pictures. I have a second home, which is now my primary home up in Napa Valley, and we had just had a snow, and I was sent those pictures, and they're up there, you can't see them, but I got to look at the snow, and I got to look at the mustard seed that's in the pastures between the vineyards. That's a close-up. Now this picture was taken later, but I'm putting it into this sequence now because girlfriend Nancy got a hold of my email list, and she sent out an email and said, this is all happening for Patty, so close to Valentine's. Everybody send her a Valentine and let her know how much you love her. And so we call this the heart wall. And I still have all of those cards, and one of these days I'm going to put them on a movable wall, and I'm going to have it displayed in my office. I'm backed up against the bed, and you see Christmas lights above there, and those didn't come immediately. Those came about 2 or 3 days later, because at night, the nurses come in regularly and they take your readings, and they walk in the night, maybe you're lucky enough to be asleep, and they flip on the overhead lights, and immediately you're awake. And what I discovered was, hey, we could put up Christmas lights, and that would give them enough light that they wouldn't have to turn on those overhead lights. So, and what would happen is nurses would come in and out, and every time they come in, they say, your room is so much fun. And there's lots more that you don't see here, but it was a real fun room and fun to decorate. Now here I am. This is transplant day. And I awakened that day, and I tied my scarf just as prettily as I could, and I'm hugging Fred. That's Fred, and I don't know if any of you know Fred Astaire, the dancer, but there was a musical he was in, and he dances with a broom. And everywhere I went, Fred went. I was tethered to Fred. In the shower, he'd stand outside while I was taking a shower. Anyway, I'm hugging Fred. I am showing my butterfly card because I feel like I'm about to become a butterfly. I am in one state, in my cocoon, and I am going to have my transplant, and I'm going to emerge from it as a winged, beautiful butterfly. And the butterfly today is sort of my little icon, and anytime friends see a butterfly, I am usually the recipient of that butterfly. Stanford is a medical teaching school, and these are my doctors. The middle gentleman is my doctor for that period of time, and these are the medical students. And he walked in the room, and he looked at me, and of course I've met him a number of times, and he goes, wow, look at you. I mean, you've got makeup on. And I went, well, yes, I mean, this is the beginning of my new life. I wanted to go into it looking really good. So there I am, all happy. Here we go. Here we go into the transplant. See that bag in the doctor's hands? What I forgot to tell you is I was watching my stem cells gather in the bag, which is fascinating to watch this bag fill up. They're pink. They're gelatinous. They look like fish roe, which is caviar. Here's this bag. It's been, I don't know if the word is cryogenically or cyrogenically, but they've been frozen. And what they're doing is they're checking to make sure that that bag has my name on it. The nurse is looking at other medical records. They're checking the paperwork to make sure I'm the person that is to receive these stem cells in this bag. And even a further check, here are the nurses checking my ID bracelet, making sure I am the right person. They're defrosting my stem cells. The stem cells have a preservative in it, and I had been told that I might taste that preservative as it came into my throat, and I was also told it might be cold, and they were right. I felt that freezing stem cell mass come in my body, and I tasted the chemical. It was nasty stuff. That is my new life I'm looking at and I'm holding. I'm emotional there, I'm emotional here. That was bag one. And I'll tell you, this was really, really exciting. It's actually, the actual infusion into the body is really anticlimactic. It happens so fast. All of this preparation, all of this prepped, and it took about 5 minutes for bag one to come into me. And that is the nurse holding up my stem cells that were coming into my body. That's me 4 hours later. I look like death warmed over. It was quite an ordeal. That is girlfriend Nancy. She was my first girlfriend in California, the person who took all these photographs. Now this is actually taken later on when she didn't have to be completely donned in her surgical attire. That's my cousin Janet, and that is what everybody had to look like when they came into the room. And they had to sit like that. They stayed with me from 9 in the morning until 9 at night. I had a patient advocate with me all that time. And they would sit there looking like that, and Janet would work on the computer. And I have birthday balloons because it was my rebirth day. Now here I am, I'm on the treadmill. You have to do a lot of cardio work. I'm with Bob, my therapist. Oh boy. Okay. What happens when you go through radiation and chemotherapy is you are basically poisoning your body and you are frying your body because you are annihilating your bone marrow. And everybody here in the room probably has gotten a sunburn at one time or another. And if you got a really bad sunburn, your skin peeled off. And if you're like me, it was really neat just to peel off that dead skin. When somebody is badly burned and they're in the hospital, there's a procedure called debridement. And you have to scrape off all that dead skin because you cannot allow bacteria to be near a person who has no white blood cells to protect you from germs. That's burned tongue membrane, tongue covering. Every single lining from my mouth, my lips, my mouth, to my anus burned off and shed. I was coughing for 2.5 weeks, total diarrhea. It is shedding out of your system. And I have to take a little pink sponge about 7 times a day and scrape off all the dead skin. And this really was not a fun procedure. I'm being silly again. It really was. I'd open my mouth and look in the mirror and I'd go, oh my God. Okay. This is my first day out of my room, and I am wearing a hazardous materials mask, which is what is supplied to every stem cell transplant patient because you cannot be around other people outside of your isolation room without wearing this mask. I named her Miss Piggy, and she is still called Miss Piggy, and I wear her on every airplane trip still, and I scare little children when they come down the aisle. There really was, this is really true. I was sitting in the window seat, and here comes this little child, and he looks at me as he's coming down the aisle, and you know, it's upsetting enough for a kid anyway. I mean, this is a little bitty tot, and all of a sudden, I can see his eyes, and they grow to be the size of saucers, and he goes, and I won't scream because this is a microphone. He started screaming and wailing, and I ripped off my mask to show him I had a real face. Poor little guy. Anyway, I'm getting to go on my very first walk outside of my room, and of course, Fred, my best date, gets to go along with me. There's Bob, and I'll tell you, I am weak as a kitten, and I've not been out of that room, and I'm weak, and and we're walking down the hall, and at one point I had to just grab hold of Bob to keep from just kind of dissolving into the floor like the Wicked Witch of the West. Okay, so now, before I get to exactly what that's about, when you know you are going to have a stem cell transplant, they tell you that you're going to be in the hospital anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It could be 2 months, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. You just don't know how long you're going to be in the hospital. But at some point in time, they're going to move you from your isolation room to the secure, air-filtrated apartments across the street. And you're going to be there. That's where you're going to spend all that extra time. You're going to walk across the street for your medical treatments, but you're going to be in those apartments for that 4 to 6 weeks, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So we're packed up. We're getting ready to move to the apartment. I came down with lots of stuff because I was going to be there a long time. I'm saying goodbye to my favorite nurse. There's Nancy. We're taking kind of our final little stroll. Well, we go into those apartments expecting to be there, and 4 days later, on day 19, they send me home. And I had been using Jinshin Jitsu, which is one of the alternative modalities that I used in cancer, end of cancer 2, round 2, and the very beginning of the transplant. And I know that Jinshin Jitsu made this journey far less duration-wise than the 4 to 6 weeks. This was day 19 that I was going home. And from this point on, everything was a first. I'm arriving at my door with a little welcome home sign, and that's the big guy is Mutzi and the little guy is Potsy. And that's my very first telephone call. And please go back to the statistics. And I am celebrating every single thing that is normal because it's a first of my new life. So there I am on a telephone call. I'm out with Cynthia, my across-the-hall neighbor who had just retired that year from 30 years of nursing. And out we go for a little walk around a bird sanctuary. Brushing my teeth for the first time because I'd only been able to do the pink sponge debridement program. And this pretty much ends the actual transplant, but I'm not finished. 6 months later, I had a party. I call it my celebration of life party. And the whole purpose of that party was to thank my family and my friends who had carried me and lifted me and loved me through round 1, round 2, and my stem cell transplant. And I'll tell you, I invited 200 people, 100 people came, and there was so much joy that day. Lots of balloons, lots of great food. Like I'm talking now, there I am on the microphone. I got to introduce people and share the story of going through rounds 1, 2, thanking people as I went, and the transplant. That young, wonderful woman is my oncologist, with whom I did cancer round 1 and cancer round 2. There is another doctor that isn't, I have no picture of her, who is my stem cell transplant primary doctor, the gentleman doctor that you saw when the medical students come in the room. He was the hospital stem cell transplant doctor. I am a singer, not professionally, but in community musicals. I sing in choruses. These friends of mine are also singers in choruses. And there was a very special song that we sang. They were the chorus. I sang the solos by Chris Williamson, and it's called Song of My Soul. And there's a part that says, I am not dying, I am living. And we were all singing that, and I had queued up the DJ, because we were going to be dancing after the end of the party, and I had him queued up to hit the button on the audio player when I said, "Hit it, George!" And on came, and if you know this song, sing along with me. Kool and the Gang from 1980, Celebrate Good Times, which goes, celebrate good times, come on. And if you know it, da-da-da-da. Celebrate good times, come on. And that's what we were doing. We were celebrating a really, really great time. And that, my friends, is the story of my stem cell transplant and my celebration of having a new life for the last 7 years and having been born again physically and getting to be here with you tonight. And I thank you so very much for allowing me to be here and be your speaker tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh.